Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we're going to sneak preview the entrance of Saturn into the sign of Pisces. Why do this now? Because this month of October 2022, Saturn is getting ready to station and turn direct in the sign of Aquarius, at which point it will then be on a trajectory to move into the sign of Pisces by early March. So that is what we are going to look at today and tomorrow as well. So kind of rounding out the week with a couple of videos to preview Saturn's entrance into Pisces. First of all, Saturn will enter the sign of Pisces March 7th, 2023. And so it will then stay in the sign of Pisces all the way until 2025 when it dips into Aries a little bit. It then retrogrades back into Pisces and finally leaves the sign of Pisces completely in 2026. So it is quite a long stay for Saturn in Pisces. It's interesting because Saturn is going to be getting out of the sign of Aquarius, and prior to that, the sign of Capricorn. Saturn ruled sign. So going into a Jupiter sign, you're just going to get a really different look and feel from Saturn, which we just haven't had for a really long time. So I think all of that together makes it worthwhile to take a look at. Tomorrow, what we will be doing is we will be looking at horoscopes and taking Saturn through all of the 12 sun and rising signs to give you a sense of where Saturn's going to land in your chart. And then closer to the time of Saturn's entrance into Pisces in the spring of 2023, or close to the spring equinox, right around that time when Saturn enters Pisces, we'll actually look at some of the history and famous people with Saturn in Pisces and previous periods and what they've coincided with in terms of collective events and stuff like that. So for now, just a little bit of a sneak preview on the archetypal combination of Saturn in the water sign of Jupiter, Jupiter's feminine water sign of Pisces. And then tomorrow we'll do some horoscopes. But before we get into it, I appreciate when you like and subscribe. It helps the channel to grow. Share your comments and reflections in the comments section. You can always find a transcript of any of my daily talks if you want to read through one of my talks on any given day. That's at nightlightastrology.com, where right now you can also learn more about my upcoming first year course. It's called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It begins every 6 months. This is the fall enrollment program, and you can learn more about it on the first year course page. If you go under courses, first year course right there, you can scroll down and learn about everything that's included in the class, hear a conversation with some alumni that I did a while back. There are 30 classes on the year. They're 2 to 3 hours each. The class starts on November 12th, so it's coming up pretty soon. There's still plenty of time to register, but do so right away, and you can make sure that you get your books and kind of get yourself all set up. There's only a couple of books that you can get, and they are optional. But we have, in addition to the 30 classes that I lead over the course of a year, there's a interactive forum discussion where you can ask questions of my tutoring staff. They'll answer within a day always. There's breakout study and tutoring sessions, tons of flashcards, quizzes, optional reading, bonus material. You have lifetime access to everything. Everything's recorded. If you can't make it live, you can take it at your own pace. You have 2 years within which from the start of class to finish the certification program at the end. In a nutshell, this is a very deep immersion into Hellenistic astrology, which is ancient astrology, but with a kind of modern archetypal and psychological sensibility. Ultimately, the last third of the program is usually what people love the most. After we go through theory, history, philosophy, and the spirituality of all of the techniques, where they come from, and why ancient astrologers ever came up with any of this in the first place, and we really deeply understand some of those very mystical teachings about aspects and houses and signs, which most people, if you've only had exposure to modern astrology, will never hear. So it's really, really cool to get into the roots of where it all comes from. And then as we go during the last third of the class, we have clients come in, and the goal is really for me to show people how to create a divinatory space where the chart becomes what we call radical, which means that the symbols have a way of jumping out at you, and then intuitively which tools and techniques to use in given the situation and given which symbols are speaking. We spend a lot of time developing that intuitive artfulness with all of our craft in class. A lot of good conversations when students come in. I read for clients, then after I read for them, they leave, and then we break down and have discussion about those sessions so you can actually see what a practicing astrologer using the techniques looks like. And so it's perfect for people who want to develop a practice or perfect for people who just want to take their craft or study to the next level. You can use the early bird payment. That saves you $500 off there. You can use a tuition plan over the course of 12 months, spread it out a little bit. That helps a lot of people. And then I highly recommend the need-based tuition option if you really want to take the program. Your heart wants to take it, but the budget is maybe a challenge for one reason or another. Tell us your situation, apply for the tuition assistance, and we'd be glad to help you out. So thank you for that. Now, what I'm going to do is pull up the real-time clock, and I want us to take a look at Saturn's entrance into Pisces before we get into it today. Here you can see the Saturn's entrance into Pisces depicted on the screen. This is on March 7th. You can see there's Saturn having just entered the sign of Pisces. There'll be a lineup of planets in Pisces at that time, so it ought to be interesting. We're also just days away from Pluto switching over into the sign of Aquarius. So we're actually going to spend a lot of time talking about what it might mean that Pluto's entering Aquarius at the same time that Saturn's entering Pisces. We'll be talking a lot about that closer to the time of these ingresses in March. For now, I want to talk today about what it means that Saturn is entering Pisces and what you might expect. So the first thing to say about this is that Saturn is moving into Jupiter's home sign. And in ancient astrology, one of the primary ways in which you understand any planetary transit is according to the planet's own nature, but then filtered through the lens of its host. So, for example, when Saturn is in Aries, it's going to be Saturn, but it's also going to have to do Saturn things in a Mars-like way, or it's Saturn, but with Mars-colored glasses on. So similarly, when you're in Aries, if Saturn were in Aries, it would also be filtering its expression through the lens of fire and through the lens of a tropical sign in terms of the sign's modality, and also in terms of it being masculine, and also in terms of it being the home temple of Mars. That's the primary consideration, in fact. And then maybe a secondary consideration would be the fact that Aries is also the exaltation of the sun. So in signs where there are two different rulers, both a domicile and an exaltation ruler, it's as though the sign itself feels like a combination of those two planets. For example, Pisces, the sign that Saturn will be moving into in March 2023, is the domicile of Jupiter, a feminine double-bodied water sign, the home temple of Jupiter, but also the exaltation of Venus. And so when Saturn enters Pisces, Saturn starts behaving in a feminine, watery, a feminine, watery, double-bodied Jupiterian and Venusian manner. Now that's a lot. It's a lot to take on. And so what I tried to do today is to capture several archetypal themes that can capture sort of all of that at once. It's hard to do, but I'll explain the theme and then try to show you how each of those levels or layers of the sign of Pisces is expressing itself within the three themes that I picked. So 3 things to watch for as Saturn enters Pisces and spends several years there. And tomorrow we'll take a look at what it might mean by house in your birth chart through the horoscopes. Number 1 is the theme of the falling star. You know, a great card for this in the tarot would be literally the star card, but reverse it or turn it upside down or something like that. The falling star could be, like, for example, some of the celebrities we'll visit later in the spring: Kurt Cobain, Jeff Buckley, just to name a few. Another celebrity right now who has that Saturn and Pisces motif that's pretty popular is Post Malone. Actually, I just want to, I'm pretty sure that's true, but let me double check that. Yeah, I'm like 99% sure. But anyway, yeah, so it is a theme, generally speaking, that, yes, it is. So it's Post Malone's. I wasn't wrong. I got it. So the falling star would speak to someone who has all of the uplifting, romantic sensibilities of a feminine sign in which Jupiter, a planet of coherence and beauty. It's when you think of Jupiter's rulership in Pisces, unlike Sagittarius, it's a lot more masculine. You think of the sense of, well, like if you've ever been out in nature and you've had an experience of the sublime. You know, this is a word that was often used to describe, romantic literature, that the romantic literature captures the spirit of the world insofar as the world is a sublime place. So sublime would, it's beauty, it's awe-inspiring, gives you a sense that the cosmos is complete and wild and beautiful, but complete and whole and arranged well, even in its wild beauty. That's the feminine wholeness and beauty of Jupiter's rulership in Pisces. It's and you get a sense that the world is a moving menagerie of beauty and wildness, but it's a well-ordered whole. And Piscean people can be so inspiring because they see that. It's romantic and it's sort of philosophical at the same time. Well, but you also have to add in the exaltation of Venus. When you talk about the sublime, you're talking about that which is beautiful and it can only be captured by things like poetry. So where contemplatives and mystics and poets meet, you have, for example, a poet that I think captures the sublime romantic sort of spirit. Neptune in modern astrology is often associated with Pisces. In ancient astrology, of course, the rulership scheme is so complicated that a lot of traditional astrologers would not necessarily give the outer planets rulerships, but regardless, Neptune is a little bit like it as well. And it like Mary Oliver or Rumi, where there's a sense of the philosophical, but the artistic and the beautiful could almost carry the philosophical off at times. But then it's so beautiful that at times it becomes philosophical. Poetry that could easily turn into essay into poetry. You're starting to get a feel for what Pisces is all about. So now take those qualities of Pisces and put Saturn in it. Saturn, the god of melancholy, of depression and winter and death, remoteness, alienation, loneliness. But also Saturn is a planet that belongs to the monastic life as well as asceticism and renunciation, but not just for the purpose of being strict, for the purpose of communing with the beloved in mystical union. Saturn is a planet that was associated by ancient astrologers with states of ecstasy that were found through being utterly alone and sort of in love with the divine, like the kind of person who what am I thinking of? The kind of person who is completely happy, lost in a library at the stack of books in a coffee or something like that. So Saturn can be like that. Saturn can actually be not long for that. Like Saturn does not necessarily love the world at times. And Saturn definitely has kind of potentially a stern, strict, sectarian, divisive side because Saturn is also associated with the category of opposition in ancient astrology, which I've said many, many times on this channel. So you guys are used to me saying that by now. But Saturn in Pisces, when it enters that sign, brings that kind of, that it has a similar, melancholy, which Saturn was associated with thousands of years ago, is one of the primary moods or themes or characteristics of romantics. And so when you put Saturn into Pisces, you get all of the kind of all of the qualities of the sublime that properly belong to the sort of double-bodied, watery Jupiter, exalted Venus stuff. But then you're taking Saturn, and in a sense, you've got, rather than the sense of being in a starry, beautiful cosmos that's filled with wonder and poetry and so rich and fertile, and filled with beautiful longing and so forth. Now you get it as a little bit more tragic. So rather than the rising star or the shooting star, which could be associated with, say, an exalted Venus or Jupiter in the sign of Pisces, now you get the fallen star, where those beautiful themes are paired with sometimes more tragic ones, a little bit more of a darkness, a little tinge of suffering. And some of this falling star can get really melodramatic. It can be sort of like, what's that thing that people would do? Like, what is this? It's the world's smallest record player playing Cry Me a River. You know what I mean? Was that the world's tiniest violin playing My Heart Bleeds for You? It's like Saturn in Pisces can almost like ham it up, because the romantic and emotive side of Jupiter and exalted Venus in Pisces can just be operatic and, sort of epic in its romantic scale, and so when you put Saturn in there, the idea of like deep, heartfelt, burning loneliness, or deep, tragic, beautiful, you know, like some of the most beautiful songs in the world are like heartachy songs, and you get that kind of a feeling. So, if you think, for example, another tarot card that comes to mind is the Knight of Cups. If you guys know the Knight of Cups in the tarot, he's sort of like he's sort of the romantic, chivalrous type of card. If you reverse the Knight of Cups, one of the things that he can be is sort of like the angsty emo band who, maybe dies of the angsty emo band lead singer that maybe dies of an overdose. So you get that kind of vibe. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if during Saturn's stay in Pisces, we see a young star or two that for many people is considered to be just brilliant and dazzling, to have a downfall, whether it's through drugs or death or suicide. I'm not predicting that exactly. I'm just saying archetypally, it's the kind of thing that you would maybe expect from Saturn in Pisces. So watch for the romantic, all these big romantic, beautiful, sort of philosophical qualities of Pisces to be blended with the sort of melancholic themes of Saturn. Number 2 is when we love what we carry. What I mean by this is that, like, if you think of the Passion of the Christ, or the idea of like Herculean labors, maybe that's not quite the best one, or even like the Odyssey, which is essentially this huge, mission that is, in some ways it boils down to love and a woman. You can obviously debate that. I'm not trying to make a case about what exactly the Odyssey's relevance is, but I'm trying to think of more examples. Help me out there. Throw something in the chat box if you've got one, for sure. But I mean, what I'm getting at is that there is a sense of noble, beautiful, romantic suffering in an act of service. It's like, I love doing astrology every day, right? I love it. Well, I have Saturn and Jupiter conjoined. So it's very much like Saturn in a Jupiter ruled sign. So I have this crazy daily rhythm, and people are always like, you have such discipline. And I'm like, I'm sure it looks like that from the outside, but and at an earlier point in my life, I think there was like more of a harsh, stern voice telling, like, kind of driving me to, like, I don't know, kind of practice makes perfect in a strict sense. Like, have you ever seen that movie Whiplash, with the drummer who has the teacher, and I forget his name, but he's a famous actor, and both of them are famous actors, and he's just driven, he's tormented, and it's like discipline. If you just keep practicing, and like that, and it's so Saturnine, but it's weird how in the lives, like I was listening to Kobe Bryant as an athlete, not as a person. I'm talking about him right now because he has a whole story. But as an athlete, what I loved about Kobe Bryant was when he said, "What drives you? Is it discipline?" And he was like, "No, man, it's love." He was like, I love basketball, and all the great people who are really good at something, and everyone else, it looks like, oh, they just practice all the time. They're monsters in the gym, or they're like, they're drill sergeants with their craft or something like that. Saturn in Pisces is where discipline starts to like dissolve into devotion. It's a beautiful sign for checking and seeing, does this work that I am bleeding for give me joy? Like, there's a lot of blood mixed in with good things, childbirth. I remember I was like, this is a lot bloodier than I thought. Than I was imagining. You know what I mean? There's a lot of blood in life. And like Saturn in Pisces has this feeling of loving what you carry, where you're proud of like the scar that you have, you're proud of like bleeding a little for something. In other words, you're able to romanticize what you're carrying, and that romance is what makes life worthwhile. I mean, life itself is a kind of burden. life itself, as so many traditions have taught us, it's so filled with suffering. Well, do you find it beautiful? Do you find the mystery of it all so profound that you wouldn't trade the hurt for anything? There's a song that I love by a band called Sleeping at Last. It's called Saturn. And they actually made a song for like all of the planets. But that song about Saturn couldn't be more Saturn in Pisces. Like, just throwing it out there. Go listen to it if you've never listened to it. It's called Saturn by Sleeping at Last. And he's talking about how good it is and how beautiful it is that we even exist. But it's sad song. It's kind of beautiful and uplifting, but in like the blues. You know what I mean? When I think of Saturn in Pisces, I think of the blues. I think of, doesn't it feel good to carry it when it hurts? You know what I mean? So that's, and what there's a nice opportunity with Saturn in Pisces over the next few years to look and say, am I carrying this out of some false sense of duty? Am I becoming a martyr? Am I breaking my back? Am I harming myself? Or do I love this? And can the pain be part of what, transfigures me? Can the pain be something that somehow, it's like there's no substitute for blood when you got, you got to put a little blood into the palette, and there's no substitute for that color. It's so rich, so beautiful, so deep. So now please don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying everyone go out and be a martyr, because that's the dark side of this, is that the same transit can be about becoming a victim or becoming a martyr. But the other thing that can be there is recognizing that it is not only normal for life to feel like suffering, but if we embrace it, and how we embrace it while taking care of ourselves, is what makes it so freaking beautiful, So these are Saturn and Pisces lessons that I've observed in the lives of my clients and so forth. How do we love what we carry? Because we carry things. I remember there was a book that I read in graduate school by Tim O'Brien, I think it was, called The Things They Carried. It was about soldiers in Vietnam, if I remember correctly. I remember a lot of that book was just about the things that soldiers carried that they loved, and it somehow they carried those things into battle with them, and it made the sacrifice and the overwhelm of not even knowing why some of them were there or caring, or was it even good that they were there, right? But they had these pictures, or these things that they carried. This is life. What do you carry? What's on your shelf? Fill your shelf with beautiful things. That's what Saturn in Pisces tells us, because it makes it worthwhile. It's silly. Some people say, oh, you collect trinkets. People have told me that before when they see my house. You collect trinkets. We encourage our girls to pick up rocks and things. It's because when you pick up things and you place them on your shelf and you remember things, you remember, that's then the life that you carry starts to carry you, So anyway, number 3, making the right sacrifice. How do we make the right sacrifice? How do we know what sacrifice is the right sacrifice to be made? Saturn in Pisces will call into question, that things that we have to let go of, put on the altar, give away. And Saturn can be the killer of joy, the killer of spring. It has a feeling of robbing us of innocence sometimes. Saturn in a spring Jupiter romantic sign. That's why it's also associated with taking, say, the life of a young rock star. But we can also preempt the sacrificial nature of this transit and lay things on our altar. I think one of the best exercises that I ever used to do back in the day, when I was a youth minister for a little bit when I was out of college. That did not last long. I was not a very good one, but I loved working with the kids that I worked with for about a year and a half that I was there before I went back to graduate school. And mostly the reason that I had to leave that was because I was interested in, trying things that, were just not fit for like a youth minister should not be smoking pot on the side. Well, maybe you had a cool youth minister that did, but I felt too guilty for it. So I left. And then, but those adventures then led me to ayahuasca, and this whole other world opened up. So I've always considered that time a very interesting time in my life. I digress. Saturn in the sign of Pisces. I used to do this exercise with the youth group We did it a few times where we would, almost like a vision board, but everyone would use this one big piece of like tag board, and we'd have magazines and stuff. And in our youth room in the church, everyone would have to put things onto this tag board with, like glue or rubber cement or whatever. And the pictures would be of things that they would willingly sacrifice. And by sacrifice, I mean like, not like I'm giving this up because it's bad or materialistic or something, but I mean like, what would happen if you lost your bike? It's your favorite thing. You ride it everywhere. What would happen? Right? Or, what would happen, God forbid, if your dog died? Or, you know what I mean? So I would have them like just, find an image of something that would be really hard to lose, that would be really hard to let go of. And I would say, now the exercise is not to put it on this board with the wish, hope, desire, or fear, that it will go, but merely to just look and see all of the things that we hold so dearly. And just the practice and exercise of symbolically saying, I put them on this altar. I can't hold on to them. They're not actually mine. They may be taken at any point from me. My bike could be taken. I remember, kids going through all sorts of funny stuff. Like at that time, it's still a big deal to have like a really nice stereo with a CD player on the top, just like stuff like that was on the board. But the reason for doing this, it's a good exercise that we can do too, is that if you get into the mindset that like, look, at any point, anything could be emptied or taken from me, God forbid, but like my kids, my house, my wife, my job, my career as an astrologer, my body, my own life, I'm not in control of nearly as much as I think I am, and any of it could be gone at any point. And you don't want to do it all the time because you don't want to be morbid, and you don't want to be sort of like, well, I'm just going to push everything away from me. You don't want to push things or people away out of the fear of losing them. So this is not like a get ahead of the Grim Reaper exercise or something like that, but just the little practice of letting go. What that does in return is it makes us hold things more lightly. It makes us serve the things that we hold, and it makes us appreciate the times that we burn with maintaining the things that we have sometimes burns us. But you would take that rather than losing a lot of things. It's an easy thing to remind myself as a parent. Well, would I rather not be a dad or deal with this bedtime routine problem? You know what I mean? So it's like that. With Saturn in Pisces, Saturn in this Jupiter-ruled Venusian sign, it can kind of feel at times like in that sign, like there's a bit of romantic tragedy. There probably will be some things that will be taken or that we let go of it's hard to let go of. It's not easy to let go of. So getting ourselves in the mindset of that emptying and that offering, placing things on the altar does not also mean that they will be taken as a psychic or a psychological act. But it means that we're available. It means that what I have is at your disposal, universe. Because I trust that my soul is eternal, that I'm a part of this eternal dance. Use what I have. When we open ourselves like that, it just shifts everything in the way that we're holding everything. So I say making the right sacrifice, but I think I could phrase it as the spirit of service and sacrifice, in the right spirit, not a spirit that's like, let me try to get attention by giving everything away, or let me build up my ego by being so sacrificial or something like that. Most of the times, the things that we have to sacrifice are small and almost imperceptible, and they're persistent. They are everyday small things in the cracks of life that we're being asked to give up, loosen our grip on, try not to control so much. Make a little sacrifice out of love and service and care and tenderness. And you do that over a long period of time. And that's what changes your heart. It's like water washing away the rough edges of a stone. And that's what we have with Saturn in a water sign. It's about making the right sacrifice, or we could say making timely sacrifices, entering into a sacrificial season in life. But by sacrificial, we don't mean big, epic, dramatic, give your life type of thing. Which almost always just serves the ego. We mean the small, imperceptible things, the things that we can do in an everyday sense. All right, well, these are my opening thoughts on Saturn into Pisces, and I hope that you find them of service to you today. And I would love to hear your thoughts, so please do share in the comments section. Were you born with Saturn in Pisces? That would be a cool thing to hear about. If so, use the hashtag grabbed or email us grabbed@nightlightastrology.com, or come back to this video when Saturn ingresses into Pisces and tell us what you think. Tomorrow we'll be doing horoscopes. We will take a look at Saturn through all 12 whole sign houses according to your rising sign or sun sign if you follow sun sign horoscopes. And that should give you a sense of where these energies might start to show up in terms of the different topical domains of life that the birth chart indicates. All right, you guys have a great rest of your day. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.